What a start, Christian Pepe. How are you doing?
Very good, Virginia Fiume. I'm from London now, and you, Virginia, from?
So I'm from Italy, but I'm in Brussels, at the heart of the European Union. And today we have a very special edition of this first English version of the Live to Stop Global Warming. So let's welcome the people that are joining and the people that are broadcasting. We say thanks to the Humans Facebook page, Science for Democracy, Envy Now Greece, and the people on the YouTube channel of Humans. And what's going to happen today? Let's do a bit of a quick intro before the initial soundtrack and introducing our guest. What's going to happen?
Well, today we think that we need to speak with the big brain, the academic world. Our initiative is based on a study of 25 Nobel laureates and a vast number of scientists. So we thought, should we start to speak with them now, to the academic world? Mostly because they are very smart. Then maybe they can tell us a little bit more about, all of this carbon pricing, especially for me, that I'm not an economist. And plus, because they are very international. In fact, today we are even broadcasting in Greece. Hello, Greek friends.
Hello, Greece. So before the soundtrack, just to summarize, this is the Live to Stop globalwarming.eu format, produced and managed by Humans. And it's a series of appointments where we discuss about the European Citizen Initiative stopglobalwarming.eu, which asks for a price on CO2 emissions to generate the revenue for the ecological transition and lowering tax on workers. Is an initiative that can be signed online by European citizens. If we are able to collect 1 million of signatures, this proposal will be on the table of the European Commission and of the European Parliament to have a strong environmental and economical policy. So today we are going to discuss this policy from different angles and different perspectives. And before introducing our first guest, because we will travel across Europe and across disciplines, I think we should start with a bit of a soundtrack. What do you think? And in the meantime, I invite all the people that are following to share the live, and I'm going to do the same. And also to tag your friends, make comments. We will try to make sure that our guest will not leave you unsatisfied. Let's start with the soundtrack.
You don't need to be scientist to believe global warming. You don't need to be politician to fight climate change. Sign on stopglobalwarming.eu.
Whoa.
Wow. You just need to be a human.
So these were the Caravaggios. It's one of the bands that pick up the challenge that is going around the web to promote Stop Global Warming. So I say we can introduce our first guest, Filipe Sengo Furtado. Hi, Filipe.
Hi, everyone.
How are you doing?
Hey. All good. How are you guys?
We are good. Do you feel stressed about the...
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this many people. But yeah, it's all good. I'm used to teaching more people, so it's okay.
Exactly. So, Filipe, you are based in Vienna in general. I don't know where are you now.
Yes, still in Vienna. I'm originally Portuguese, but I'm based in Vienna. So yeah.
And you teach marketing and communication at the Vienna University, right?
Well, mostly marketing, not so much the communication aspect of it, but more, yeah, customer relationship management, some more customer analytics, basically statistics.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
have a thing for carbon pricing.
Yeah, I have a bit of a crush on carbon pricing. Is my latest hobby. Well, it's been a passion for a couple of years now. Just the notion of taxing externalities, which is another way of calling it. And so yeah, recently I decided to join the efforts on this movement.
Thank you, Filipe. So, Christian, how we kick off the first speaker to remind the people that are joining and connecting, the whole idea tonight is to speak about carbon pricing from different perspectives. How we start? Because Filipe has a little game for us, but
Okay.
yes.
Filipe, when you joined, this event, did you think it was a normal academic thing, with presentation, PowerPoint, or things like that?
No, not really. But as an academic, it's hard to break the chains. And habit is a strong force. So yeah.
Christian is frozen.
Yep.
So while Christian is frozen, I will take the responsibility to have everyone listen something. And I remind to the people in the audience that are watching us that they can send any question. But I will I will make all of you listen a message that we received from a 6-year-old girl. Because basically, me and Christian are not researchers and academics. So the best way to ask questions to researchers and academics is to ask you guys to explain to us and the people in the audience things very simply, very, very, very simply. So let's kick off with the first audio message, hoping it works. And of course, it's not opening where I want it to do. 1 second. Very slow. Okay, I can't do that. Then let's go with the flow. Filipe, you prepared for us a little quiz. So
yeah, I don't know if you uploaded it or.
I need to be your hands. I need to be your hands because it didn't allow me to do that.
Okay, then give me just 1 second because there it is. Sorry. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
No, I need to share it myself. 1 second, I'm gonna share it and you walk us through that.
Because I have that option.
You do? Okay.
I do, yeah. Let me see. Yeah. Can you see anything?
Not yet. Let's see if I just try now.
Nope.
Okay, I'll try to do it by myself. Apologies for the inconvenience to the people that are following us. Let's see if it works.
Oh, that's a lot of screens.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, now it does, I guess. Oh, it's too small though. I think that the format was changed.
Yeah, because of the computer. So technology is not helping today. So let's be creative as much as possible, and because it's very complicated. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try.
Let's go. Yeah. I think I can read out what it was supposed to be. And so my question, I don't know if we see any comments or not, but so yeah, how do you put out a grease fire? And this was supposed to be a quiz that most people cannot read because the font was just utterly reduced. But so option A, you pour a cup of water over it. So by the way, grease fire is when you're cooking and you have some grease and suddenly it catches fire. So option A is you pour water over it. Option B is you just pray. So don't do anything. Just pray and hope for the best. Option C is you cover it with a lid, you know, so just you have a lid for your pot, so you just use that. And option D is you compromise between A and C, meaning you pour half of a cup of water and you also cover half of it with a lid. Now, as Ana, my fellow Portuguese friend, has mentioned, option C is the right one. So can you go on, Virginia? Exactly. So
oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So the right thing to do is to cover it with a lid. And so, yeah. Now, parallelly, can we go to the next slide now? So how do you reduce carbon emissions? And here we have, again, 4 options. Number 1, so A is subsidies or subsidize renewable energies. Option B is do nothing. Option C is put a carbon tax or put a price on CO2 equivalent emissions in more technical terms. And option D is again going to be a compromise between A and C, which means you spend half of the budget on subsidies and you spend the other half on putting a price on carbon. What is the right answer? Let's give it maybe 5 seconds in case anyone in the audience wants to have a guess.
Something is happening because I need to check the chat. No comments, so no. You need to give us the answer.
So the answer and the whole movement that we're following here kind of gives the answer is again going to be C. So put a price on CO2 equivalent emissions. Now, this is not a matter of opinions. This is not something that I came up with. This is just the consensus among scientists. So if we believe in climate change, we might as well believe that this is the answer because there's a lot of consensus that this is the right way to go. Not only that, but we also know that option A, can we go to the next slide? So. Yep. We have actually a parallel between these options. This should be aligned. So for the audience, the options are equivalent in both scenarios. And so we know that C works in both situations. Any scientist will tell you this is the right solution. Both policy oriented scientists and economists back in the 70s were suggesting this already. So we've known this for a while. And now we have empirical evidence for that. We also know that pouring a cup of water, similarly to subsidizing renewable energies, is going to make both problems worse. They're not helping. Well, B and C, B on both options is also, you know, we know that that's perhaps not the wisest option. And we also know that half measures are not going to get the job done. So the same way that pouring half a cup of water, so doing the wrong thing and then doing half of the right thing is not going to put out the fire. Spending half of our efforts on a subsidy and the other half on a tax on carbon is not going to solve the problem either. And so the problem we face is that also putting the lid is not expensive. Is actually much faster than pouring water. It's cheaper and it's faster. Similarly, putting a tax on carbon is much cheaper, and there's an array of evidence to show it. Great example is the fact that Germany doesn't have a carbon price compared to the UK, which has, and the energy costs in Germany are higher than in the UK. So it is a lie that a carbon tax has to be expensive. There's much more complicated mechanisms at play, which I will not explain, but I'm very glad to explain to anyone who's interested later on, that explain why this happens. And so can we just go on to the next slide? So basically, when it comes to climate policy, it's not about just approving a carbon tax. It's about disregarding the other alternatives, the other policies, because we know what works, we know what doesn't work, and we know what disturbs. We're also tired of knowing that individual actions will not get the job done. For anyone who's interested, you're going to have a look at licensing effect. So this is more of the field of that I'm more interested in, meaning cognitive biases. And we also know that the public opinion is more likely to shift towards useless policies if we present them with that. So if you give electors the choice between a carbon tax and a subsidy on renewables, they will choose the subsidy on renewables, even though we know now that they do not work. And this is why this is so dangerous. And so final slide is just just to summarize what we have. Can we just go on one slide, Virginia, please? So basically, our current policy is the equivalent to having a vaccine shot against COVID-19 and just refusing to take it. And instead, we just take copious amounts of aspirins, hoping for the best. So we know what works, and instead we're making decisions that we know will not lead to anything. And so this is why it is so crucial that citizens take matters into their own hands and take some action. So sorry for the very I have a very short list of references. There's much more. These were basically the tabs that I had open on my laptop from a 5-minute search. If anyone goes down the rabbit hole, you'll find much more evidence to everything I've been saying here. So that's it. I'm sorry that it took me so long, Virginia. I think I took up too much time.
No, you haven't, but we have a final question for you for this round. In the meantime, we welcome João Pedro Almeida, Luca Mattioli, Ana Santos Fernandez who are watching. So thanks a lot. Christian, we have a question for Filipe before going to our next guest. But we can't hear you.
Yes, Filipe, it's a very difficult question. Okay. Can you hear me? We have a very difficult question. It might be your hardest exam in your life, Filipe. Get ready, because the question, Virginia, are you going to broadcast?
I understood one second. I am. It's going to be a very long afternoon. 1 sec. Where is it?
Sorry.
Maybe it's this one. Hope so. It's of course not working. So we're going to read it, Christian, because it's not working.
Okay,
so please read it.
Then. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay, was a child of 5 years old asking, how can you convince the adults like you that we need to live in a clean and healthy world? Kevin, 5 years old from London. Go, Filipe.
Well, that's the not the $1 million question, but perhaps the 11 billion lives question, right? So that question is worth a lot of lives. And I wish I had an answer, quite frankly. I really wish. But you know, I'm a scientist, so my job is to always answer, it depends. And it depends on who you're talking with. If we're talking to Kevin's parents, I think Kevin is the answer, right? Is to let them know that this is the way to ensure that Kevin will have a future, or at least a better future, that at least he can experience a life remotely similar to what we have. It is not yet too clear what the true consequences are going to be. We know they're going to be bad. We don't know how bad exactly. We don't know in what dimensions and how. It's hard to quantify these things, but we know they're going to be bad, right? And so I think that the easiest way to convince people, at least to me it would work, is that solutions do not have to be expensive. And sometimes, and in this particular case, we have, in economics, there's an old saying, which is that there are no free lunches. The father of economics said it. This is one of the cheapest meals we will ever find. Carbon pricing is one of the cheapest meals we can find. And so it won't cost us too much, and it will get the job done. And so maybe that's what I would go with.
Thank you, Filipe. So I think we can bring on stage the next guest, who is Alessandro Cascavilla. Christian, do you want to introduce him?
Yes, Alessandro Cascavilla is...
Hi, guys.
I'm going to introduce from the fun part. Ciao, Alessandro. Hi, Alessandro.
Ciao. Hi, guys.
It's very, very famous for something called Economia del Suicidio. Can you tell us
Suicide economics.
more? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then we go more deeper.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. I am a PhD student, as you can see, of the University of Bari in economics. But since my second year of the university, I start up my presence on the social network, creating this community of economic students, the largest Italian community of economic students on Instagram and Facebook, that it is called Economia del Suicidio, in which I share ironic and stupid things about economics. So I try to make irony on the economic life of students. What we study in university, I try to make it funnier in order to let the study be less, how to say, tough. So in the years, I reached more than 150,000 people, all students of economics. And now also YouTube. So I have 2 more followers. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Exactly. Okay, so you bring the economical perspective to this table of PhD and researchers. So what I find fascinating about the carbon pricing proposal is that it matches ecology, economy, and also how specifically Stop Global Warming is .eu is kind of structured. It also offers to a certain extent a social justice approach to the whole thing. So can you tell us a bit more from an economical perspective on the value and the meaning of a carbon pricing policy, and specifically maybe what convinced you of stopglobalwarming.eu as a proposal in itself?
Yes, in fact, I just thank you for inviting me to this webinar, because I support the idea of the stopglobalwarming.eu, because I think that the fact of creating less pollution, gaining more tax revenue, is a win-win situation for the planet and for the economy. So in fact, I think that in order to understand better the economic terms behind the carbon pricing mechanism, we have to understand first what is a public good, what is the problem of social costs, and hence which are the best environmental policies that a state is supposed to implement in order to get the best result with the least effort. So if we talk about the public goods, we know that there are a particular kind of goods that are non-rival and non-excludable, in the sense that respect to my private good, that is my smartphone, that if I don't pay for it, I can't use it. A public good is like the water, the air, so nobody can deny me to access it, and I have to pay nothing in order to access it. So this is a market failure because public goods such as the natural resources, environmental goods, usually are not produced by private, because such as firms, because of course they just create positive externalities, so all the individuals can access to it. So they don't create a private gain, a private profit. So it is important to understand why we have to focus on the role of public goods, because such as the quality of the air, if we suppose that we are interested in the behavior of the good public air, the public good, the consumption of people of this good creates externalities. The externalities reflects to the fact that an action of mine, my action, could affect your function of production or consumption. It creates direct or indirect effects on what you are going to do, even though you did not request these effects. So it is important to understand in a world composed, for example, by just two individuals, a polluter and a polluted, if we assume that the polluter is a firm producing a private good such as a smartphone or a car, which is a high polluting good, and the polluted, in this case, all the society, because the society is the owner of the quality of the air, in this case for the carbon pricing, we know that the increase in production for the private firm would lead to a negative externality to be borne by the whole society. So the entire negative externality, we can call it the social cost. So the problem of social cost is very important. It has been first studied by Coes in economics, and it states that, for example, when if we assume that we can give the access of polluting or to be polluted to one of these two individuals, the firm or the entire society, the market will bring the equilibrium to the optimal level of pollution, in the sense that if we assume that the state can control how much it is possible to pollute in the economy, and if we assume that these kind of rights can be sold to the polluter in terms of a carbon pricing, so if we give a price to the pollution activity, it will be optimal in economic and social terms. In fact, we have to understand that the pollution is not always a negative fact. In fact, there are three kinds of pollution. There is the Pareto irrelevant pollution, that is the absorption capacity. Is the fact that you can pollute a little bit because the entire system can use the renewable resources in order to have an optimal level of pollution. There is then the optimal level of pollution, and then the one that is too much, that is supposed to be lowered according to several kinds of environmental policies, such as the carbon tax or the cap and trade or the subsidies, as Filipe said before than me. So let's jump to the role of the carbon tax, that in economics is called the Pigouvian tax. It is a tax that is imposed on the marginal product, on the increasing production of polluting goods. So according to this, if we assume that the economics is composed by a marginal benefit that is decreasing with increase in production, while with the increase in production there is a social cost that is increasing, we can say that imposing a Pigouvian tax, so a carbon tax on the new production that is polluting, we can reach the optimal level of pollution. In order to do so, we have just to first identify the optimal pollution level. So if we know that we can reach 100 quantity of pollution, we have to set that point that is supposed to reach. Then we have to compute to understand how is the social cost associated with this level of pollution, and then we have to impose a tax equal to the marginal social cost. So the pros of the Pigugan tax or the carbon tax is the fact that it's very efficient because it applies the also known as the PPP, the polluter pays principle. So it is very simple because it's like the if you pollute, you are supposed to pay. So if you want to pollute more, you are supposed to pay more. And this is of course efficient because on one hand it increases the tax revenue for a state that could be redistributed among the one that are still bearing the social cost of these one who are still polluting, or it just can be invested in green and sustainable new resources, as we know now is the role, for example, for the Green Deal of Europe, or just the Recovery Fund that has this kind of vision, long-run vision. So on one hand, it increases the tax revenue. On the other, it decreases the level of pollution. So it's a win-win situation for the economic point of view. However, there are also some dark side of the carbon pricing because increasing the marginal cost of the production, it of course will somehow in the first moment increase in inflation, because producers can translate the tax on the customers. So the increase in price will lead to a bit of inflation in the first time. So this is one of the dark sides. But for example, according to the higher cost of production, this will lead investors to move capital in states who are not using the carbon tax. So there will be a problem of free riding of states who can gain foreign direct investment because they are not taxed according to the carbon pricing. So the problem of free riding is similar to the one of the taxation, that the international taxation that there is. That if all the states cooperate in order to reduce pollution, increasing the carbon pricing, if your neighbor state decreases the carbon taxes or does not impose a carbon tax on pollution, he will gain more foreign direct investment. So for this reason, I still support the stop global warming aim, because I think that also in this case we have to be united. So there is a need for the European Commission, the European Union, to work all together in order to lower this the pollution. In fact, we can say that if we keep in mind, if we take into account these negative sides of the carbon pricing, we can see the example of the Sweden. The Sweden introduces a first carbon price in 1991, something like 25 euros more or less per tons of carbon. And in 25 years, more or less, in 30 years, Sweden generates a lot of tax revenue without compromising the economic activity. So there is a way to put the carbon tax, allowing the economic activity to go on without denying the attractivity of foreign direct investment and increasing the tax revenue. For example, in Italy, there is an article of the fiscal monitor of the International Monetary Fund, which states that in Italy, if we impose a carbon tax of 75 euros per tons of carbon, it will let grow the price of carbon for more than 100%, 135% more or less. This, of course, will increase in the first time the electricity bill for citizens, something like 20%, and also the fuel for cars. So this will disincentivize a lot the use of the carbon and non-renewable energy. So this, according to a change in the structure of taxation. So if we increase the tax revenue from the carbon pricing And then if we lower it for the workers, this is the main goal of the Stop Global Warming petition. It is, of course, positive for the entire economic system. And so I think that this is the right way to go on. And for this reason, I just support this this initiative, and I would like to share it always on my web pages on Instagram. This is the best way that I can do it right now.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Also, because just to remind to the people that are connecting, there is a direct action that each EU citizens can do, which is to sign the European Citizen Initiative and get others to sign. So it can be signed online on stopglobalwarming.eu, and it's an official request to the Commission. So it's not just a petition, but it's a way to put on the table of the EU institutions something that it's in the debate. Like, as you said, it's not something new, it's something that's been around, it's already around in different EU countries. So we have a couple of questions from the audience. I'll try to throw it here for Alessandro, but also maybe for the others if anyone wants to answer. So the first one is from João Pedro Almeida, who is asking, do you envision the carbon tax being made at a European level, let's call it the EU first federal tax, or at a local level? So the reality is that fiscal policy is not something where the EU decide for everyone, but can you tell us maybe something about how potentially it could work, the taxation element?
Okay, in theory, it will be preferable to do it at a federal level. So in fact, for this reason, US are always better than us in order to make decisions according to the international taxation, also in this case for the carbon pricing. So as I said before, the problem of free riding could arise in case of each state starts doing it by himself. Because as I already said, if Italy started to increase the carbon pricing, say, for more than 25%, right, than the one that is before, I don't know, our very neighbor country could lower the tax on the pollution and could get all the investment that are not anymore in Italy. So I think that in this case, European Union is supposed to make all the things for the others. And here, I don't know if you know that for the new own resources that will finance the recovery fund, the Next Generation EU, there is already a plastic tax of 80 cents for each ton of non-recyclable plastic. So there is a way to impose the tax to all the member states at the EU level. So I think that this is the best way to work with it, because otherwise we have also less bargaining power with such as China or US that are more and more polluting than us. So I think that we have act all together, we have tax all together in order to go with China and US and Russia and say, okay, we are 28 states, 27, and we want this. So it is always a step toward a better world, and also a step forward in the Paris Agreement. So I think that this is the way.
Thank you very much. I think Filipe had a 2 cents question. In the meantime, I pass by other questions. Then maybe Alessandro, if you also want to go on the Facebook pages to reply, like, let's see if we can take the questions later on. But Filipe, if you want to comment on this one, and in the meantime, I show the other questions. And in the bench, we have Franco Donati. So we're going to move from economy to ecology in a bit. So bye, Filipe. We can't hear you though.
How about now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry. So I just wanted to share my slightly more optimistic view than Alessandro's, and that's why I'm a bit more why I would believe in a local level carbon tax, for the following reason. So Alessandro mentioned very well. So in theory, we would expect countries to become less competitive if they implemented a carbon tax. In theory, that would happen. But the problem is that, or not the problem, the good news is that it's a bit more complex than that, because a higher price on carbon will not lead to a proportional marginal increase in production costs. And one great example, an anecdotal example to that, is the fact that the second and third most attractive foreign direct investment countries in the world are Switzerland and Sweden, right behind the United States. So number 2 and number 3 are Sweden and Switzerland for foreign direct investment. These two countries have some of the highest carbon taxes in the world at the same time, right? So how much is this carbon tax really dragging them down? When I say that they have a high carbon tax, I'm saying they have over €100. I think Sweden over 100, as Alessandro mentioned, and Switzerland about €100 compared to Portugal that has 25. So it's a huge difference, right? And so because I don't think that this would inhibit foreign direct investment so much, I would go for local, also because the effect of a carbon price on each country is heavily dependent on the country's current energy networks. And so in Poland, for instance, you need a very high carbon price in order for the country to actually reduce their carbon emissions substantially, because they don't have any free capacity on cleaner energy sources. In Portugal, for instance, at a price of around €27, you reach the maximum savings almost. So by the marginal increases, and that means by increasing just a little bit more and sorry, Alessandro, for butchering the economic terms here. I know this is painful for an economist to hear, but I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible.
So much. Yeah.
But in certain countries, it doesn't matter whether you have 20 or 30 or €100 carbon price. You already have a lot of savings on emissions by a small increase in the carbon tax. And that's why I would allow some flexibility across EU countries. But I don't oppose the idea of having a baseline price and EU saying, hey, a ton of CO2 costs to the environment and to everyone, it should cost at least €20 per ton, let's say. That's the bare minimum we're willing to accept, and then countries can play with that. And as Alessandro mentioned, and in much better terms than I could have, why are we taxing labor? Why are we taxing capital? Why are we taxing things that we want more of? Why not tax something we want less of? So make your country attractive, not by reducing taxes on pollution, but by reducing taxes on productivity, right? And that's the benefit of a carbon price. Sorry,
Thank you,
my 2
Filipe.
cents.
Thank you, Filipe. And I knew that when you have academics, there is argument, counter-argument, and we can go on for ages. But first of all, thanks to the over 30 people that are watching the live streaming now, you can be more because you can share and invite people to follow along. If Christian agrees, I will bring in Franco Donati, and we move from economy to ecology. What do you think? Okay. So in the meantime, thanks to Filipe and Alessandro, if you want to stay with us until the end, there might be more time. In the meantime, on the different Facebook pages that are broadcasting the live, Humans Stands for Democracy, Envy Now, there are some questions. So if you want to have a look, you can reply as well there. So let me just do a bit of a DJ thing. And we bring in Franco Donati. Hi, Franco, from Leiden University.
Hello, Franco.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me fine? I'm having some technical issues right now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful.
And I have a first question for you, quick one.
Sure.
Industrial ecology, to me, sounds like a oxymoron or a contradiction. Like in my ignorant perspective, I would say ecology is all about flowers and trees and stuff, and industrial is all about gas emissions, steel, and things like that. So you are a researcher on industrial ecology. So for dummies, what does it mean?
So yeah, that's a very good question. So what we do is basically look at the interaction between society and the environment. So we have in society we have very big international supply chains. So products or raw materials get extracted in certain countries, then they get produced, then they get moved to another country to get semi-manufactured, so that we can produce goods that are sold to consumers or other industries. So we look at these flows in the economy, and then we look at the global economy, and then we look at the environmental impacts or the environmental interactions, in any case, that these international supply chains have. And we try to define solutions, or anyways advise policymakers and industries how they can improve their supply chains, or anyways their countries, so that they are more environmentally aligned. So that's why it comes from industrial ecology. So there's like a
makes sense. So you prepared us something to, I'm gonna share one of the materials that you sent to me, and let's kick into this carbon pricing world, unless Christian has a 6-year-old kid's question as well that we can send to Franco to help him to warm up for the panel.
Maybe later, a video.
Okay. So I'm gonna share the first visual that Franco sent us, if I will not make a mess. Here it is. Bye, Franco.
Okay, so you can click play, and it will show. There is a really cool map developed by Kiln and UCL Energy Institute.
Wait, because there is the audio that I would like to. I can't exclude the audio, I'm afraid. Let's just run for a bit.
It actually looks more like this. But area is only one way of looking at the world. This site gives some others, such as where the people are and where the money is. Mainly though, this site is about climate change. Browse the responsibility maps to see how each country helps drive global carbon emissions, from extracting fossil fuels and burning them, through to consuming the goods and services that result. You can also see historical emissions, most of which are still in the air, and potential emissions that are currently locked up in coal, oil and gas reserves. In addition, you'll find some vulnerability maps, which show the people most at risk from climate change.
Franco, I let you explain it, and then I will put it in the chat for our people so that they can listen to the whole thing. What do you think?
Yeah, that works well. So
okay.
Basically, what I wanted to show with this short video with this map that you should definitely go check out, because it's really cool to see. So you have different aspects that influence each continent. So you have the North America and Europe and Asia as being like very, very wealthy, right? We have a high GDP in comparison with other regions of the world, in particular also the EU, which puts us in a very good strategic level in a way for implementing a carbon tax. And we also see that we are also, like, from a consumption perspective, some of the main responsibles, the main people responsible for CO2 emissions. So there is an ethical question here. So what we're going to do about that? And in addition to that, there is a historical aspect, putting Europe as historically one of the largest polluters in the world. So there is a and I wanted to, so there are these three aspects. So there is a technical aspect, which is Europe is in a very good strategic position to implement a carbon tax. There is a ethical question of, okay, we have been doing the most damage, and we also see that from a people at risk perspective. So the impacts that climate change will have on people it will affect countries where well, there's less wealth, where there's less development, have been historically less responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. So there's this aspect that I wanted to highlight here. And then moving on to the other map that I wanted to show, which is related to the supply chains discussion that I was mentioning earlier, we see that. So this map shows all the the data is from 2012, but it's still relevant. So it shows all the shipments that come from Asia going to North America, and the emissions, the embedded emissions that are being transported from one region of the world to the other. So meaning that the phone that you buy in your country, it's going to have primary materials that are coming from probably from Africa, they're coming from Russia, Asia, and they're being assembled somewhere else, and then emissions are being emitted during the transportation and the assemblage part, and then they're shipped to our countries to be consumed, where they will have other emissions, and again ending in the life cycle in well, probably being burned or recycled or what have you. So when we implement a carbon tax, and I think it's absolutely fundamental that we do, because the EU is, as I was saying, it's a very strategic point, because we can not only implement it domestically, so coercing in a way industries locally into having a more environmentally responsible production, but we can influence industries outside of Europe through a carbon adjustment mechanism that would allow to level up competition between the countries from the other countries and domestic production in the EU. So this is really the best way of going about it, implementing it domestically and putting a carbon adjustment tax. The only issue here is that what are we going to add to the carbon tax at different levels? Like right now, the emission trading scheme that we have doesn't include all the polluters. It only includes energy producers. It doesn't within Europe, but it doesn't in cement industry. But agriculture is left out. Aviation from international traffic and maritime traffic from international shipping is missing. And the more things that you add to the carbon tax or the carbon adjustment mechanism, the more expensive things will get to the consumer level. So, and I'm gonna round up here. Yes, prices might end up being a little bit higher for the consumers and for industries domestically, but we need to keep in mind that the current system that we have, where industries are allowed to have externalities of this level, the bill is currently being picked up by people anyways. It's socialized, the cost of environmental emissions. So a carbon tax is just shifting the focus from okay, people will pay for it, being unaware of it, through health costs and through displacements and environmental impacts that will need to be remediated, to actually let's include it entirely into the price of our goods. So that was where I wanted to get.
So I think Sengo, sorry, there's a little bit of a background. There was a question in the chat from Larry Moffat, who is the one of the activists of the Rise Climate Network in Belgium, and we're really happy to have him listening to the program. We met in a demonstration in front of the council a couple of weeks ago during the EU summit. He was asking, in addition to a new carbon tax, do we also need a border tax on indirect emissions to prevent free riding and unfair competition by non-EU countries? This is, for what I'm understanding, more or less what you were saying, like finding a combination that can ensure that it's not a state-based measure, but it's something that creates the right balance between the different states and continents. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah, you're understanding it correctly. There is really no way around it, because otherwise we're just going to be taxing industries domestically. The ones that can go to other countries might go to other countries. It's not necessarily always the case. And the ones that can go, they will just have higher prices, and it's just nonsensical. We need to have a carbon adjustment mechanism. It will need to be compliant to World Trade Organization discussions, of course, because otherwise it cannot be done at the moment. But it is absolutely necessary, because otherwise it just wouldn't go anywhere. Also because a lot of the stuff that we're buying is coming from other countries right now. Domestically, yeah, we're producing things, but the issue is somewhere else. We are putting externalities in other countries.
Thank you, Franco. I have I don't know, Christian, I see your question time face.
To be honest, I have a question which is unexpected. I think that having carbon tax to European level is also important to give to European Union a little bit more power in terms of federalistic way of the continent. And as you said previously, that also really well balanced, in the macro power regions, also the power from the other region like China, United States. I really agree that this should be a European tax more than a national tax itself. But I have a question from you, from another child. Should I read Virgilia or? I read it. So it's a girl from London, she's 5 years old. She said, it's true that some companies simply can't be eco-friendly.
Did she use the word eco-friendly, Christian? Are you still trying to convince babies to sign stopglobalwarming.eu?
No, they can't do.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yes. There are some industries that are just not suitable for the type of work that we want, the type of economy that we want, and they will be left out of the economy eventually. But that is just how competition and how the system works, right? So if there is something that is not suitable in the market anymore, it will be driven out by competition. Or if it's just killing people, then we should not be having it there. So yeah, some companies will just not be they're just not part of the discussion, but other companies will come in their place, and then they will do better things.
And we will see also later on with Stenos exactly this point. He set up his own company, which is doing something special. So we will talk about that as well. Last question for you, Franco. Because one of the concepts of live to stop globalwarming.eu in the EU, this format that we have, is also to give citizens, European citizens, that sparkle to do something for the campaign. So it happened, how we met was that you received an email about from the Science for Democracy mailing list about this carbon pricing initiative, I think, and you kind of were involved in the campaign, as in like, oh, why don't we try to do things together? And you became also a supporter of Science for Democracy, and also you are helping in the Netherlands to spread the word about stopglobalwarming.eu. So from an academic and citizen perspective, what is that do you think moves someone to do something for a campaign like stopglobalwarming.eu, which is ultimately a European citizen initiative? Like, why do you think we people need to try to proactively push for policies such as the carbon pricing one or other policies, as a person, not really only from, or as a person and as an academic?
I think it's a problem ownership. Basically feeling like the problem that is affecting your community overall is your responsibility to fix in the first place. And of course, we are all limited in the way that we can affect the system, of course. But coming together with other people is really the only way at this point to really change things. And yeah, so I think problem ownership is the main issue. And then I have some thoughts on the civic engagement, but I don't want to take too much time because I know that other people also want to talk.
Okay, maybe we keep it for either the second round or a special edition on civic engagement. So thanks, Franco Donati.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hope you can stay with us until the end. And we are gonna bring on stage another energetic engineer, which I always like to say because it gives me energy to say energetic engineer, Andrea Salimbeni, is also the coordinator of the local initiatives carried on by humans around circular economy, and is based in Florence, or it works in Florence. So Andrea, you're going to bring another ecological perspective to the table today. You didn't prepare any video, any music, and you don't have any kind of rock and roll for us, but we have you. So what's your drive for this stopglobalwarming.eu initiative? Why you think carbon pricing is a solution to pursue, and how does it fit in the whole ecological energy kind of framework?
Yeah, I don't have so much effects or any other attractive media stuff. I'll try to be quite short in presenting my point. My point is most of the time we have our issue in understanding why we need CO2 pricing. Most of the people say, yeah, we know climate change is real, but the direct impact on their life is difficult, as the 5-year-old guy said. How do you convince people that the global warming is harming their life quality? I think we can bring the point to a much wider concept. Giving a price to the CO2 emission means giving a price to the lack of sustainability. And the lack of sustainability is not only emitting CO2 in the atmosphere, is our linear economy, as we know since the 1920. What I mean is, so far we have always be part of a linear economy based on the exploitation of resources. Every product we have in our hands comes from a linear production process. Linear means that we extract, we refine, and we consume. Then, if we have something, we dispose. This is our greatest issue in Europe, because in Europe we don't have resources, and all our economy is based on resources of other countries. Countries like China, like Asia, like Northern Africa, where they have resources we use every day to produce our smartphones, our devices, our stuff, our food. So why we say carbon pricing can change this economy? Because if we start thinking about sustainability, not only concerning the emission of CO2, but as a CO2 equivalent emission, as European Commission is always talking about. We are not talking only about the CO2 coming out from the chimney. We talk about CO2 equivalent. CO2 means transportation at long distances between South of America to Europe. CO2 means the impact of extracting materials from mines. And CO2 means the everyday consumption of fossils that we have in the extraction procedures, and in the lack of valorization of the residues that we have in our economy. Just to make you an example, I do research for industries, even if I'm in university. For every process that we can have in mind, there is an exploitation of resources, and these resources are not in Europe. If you think about agriculture, which is the common sector, we know the wheat cultivation for bread production or any livestock, or any other vegetable that we have, we need fertilizers to cultivate them. And one of the most critical fertilizers is phosphorus. Phosphorus comes from Egypt or Northern Africa. And if you talk with the fertilizers industry and you propose them recycled phosphorus, they say it costs too much. So they prefer to take phosphorus from Egypt or other countries or Morocco, because they expect rocks mines and they get from there. So what is the point? Taking that phosphorus from that countries with mines procedure is an emission. Transporting that phosphorus is an emission, is a source of CO2 emission, is a strong source of CO2. But they don't want to change because it's less competitive to take recycled phosphorus from a waste or any other biogenic material that we can have here. So what could be our proposal? Where is the change? The change is to put a price on CO2 so that that recycled material could be competitive, so that we could stop getting from other countries with not that sustainable way of extracting, for example, because not only in terms of environment, but also in terms of human rights, because we know that we don't have the same rules for job health in Europe than in Northern Africa, or anyhow in other countries. So this is my point. My point is, don't think about CO2 emission as the CO2 coming out from a chimney. Think about the CO2 as sustainability indicator. And think about carbon pricing as a pricing of unsustainable processes. This is the only way we have to change. Every car that we have, every windmill that we see, it is produced from steel. And that steel is produced from coal. But coal is not in Europe, it's in China. And coal mines in China are underground. And people in China take out coal with very high risk for their health. So this is my point. And that's it.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much for your perspective. I'm going to take two of you on stage. So we have 20 minutes and two more speakers. We have Anna Winkler from, she's German, but she is a researcher on microplastics at the Politechnic of Milano. And I see two of you, so I will try to add you to the stream, hoping that you are the one. You want to try and speak to see?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Cool. You are
Hi
the
there.
one. Hi, Anna. Welcome.
Hi.
And I'll keep you on stage with Andrea, because I think your topics kind of intertwined. And so you ended up here first because when I was, and I have to say, we were preparing the panel and they were all males. So I felt like it's a coincidence. It's
Female
a coincidence.
input.
Exactly. All these guys. Now, first of all these guys are in different ways active on the campaign, so I didn't want to exclude them. But then in the invite, I added a line saying, by the way, I recognize it's an all-male panel and we want some woman, not because you're a woman, but because it happens that there are also women in the academic world. So I'm very glad that you're here with us. Sorry for the feminist moment. But behind that, from your experience as a researcher on microplastics, how does it fit all the plastic element? And again, we are making questions for dummies because me and Christian are not scientists. So how plastics relate to CO2 emissions, how microplastics relate to CO2 emissions, and why tax on CO2 emissions can make sense. Super simple.
Okay, so I study microplastics, and during my research, I found microplastic basically everywhere. And so microplastic comes from plastic, and plastic is derives from plastic, which is basically fossil fuel. And so we extract the oil and we release it to the atmosphere. and it's purely carbon. And the problem that we have is that the plastics that we use are most of them we don't recycle. So most of the plastics we use are made for single-use purposes only. And if we put a limit to that, if we put a tax on the carbon, we can at least reduce the amount of single-use plastics and maybe give a little bit of initiatives for the industry to think a little bit more on the recyclability of the plastic itself. Because the most plastic that we use, the single-use, they cannot be recycled. There are so many additives in it, and we find them everywhere in the environment. And sorry, I'm right now on my vacation.
Not in the mood.
No, it completely hit me. The invitation was a bit spontaneous, but since microplastic based on plastic is a pollutant based on carbon, and sorry, I'm having.
Okay, this is what I understand, that to produce plastic, you put a lot of CO2 emissions on the planet, in the atmosphere. Okay. So can we live in a world without plastic? Or...
No, absolutely not. Plastic is an essential product. We need it for medicine. We need it for the industry. It's very essential. But the problem, as I said, is the recyclability. Plastics are being produced with additives, with colorants, in a way that we cannot recycle them, and those are the problems.
Okay, so again, my dummy brain is saying a policy like stopglobalwarming.eu, the one that we propose with the European Citizen Initiative, put the pressure, the fiscal pressure, like give a price to the CO2 emissions. So somehow it compensates the fact that you might need some products that inquinate, but there is a sort of a balance of pricing and stuff. Does it make sense in your opinion? Or
yes, it makes sense in the way that it is often thought by consumers and by everyone that it is based on the consumer's decision to buy plastics or other alternatives. Whereas I'm of the opinion that it is the responsibility of the policy to make a change, because often people are not educated enough to understand the implications of a plastic pollution, and they don't understand the effect it will have. So it is the responsibility of the policy to actually reduce the amount of single-use plastics, and by putting a tax on it, it shifts the responsibility to the industry and generated by the policy. And it may lead, as someone before said already, to a higher price on plastic products, but this will again influence then the consumer decision. So so this is my point, that it's not up to the consumer, because not everyone has the privilege of being educated enough why the policy needs to interfere and regulate the industry of not producing so much single-use plastics, or if they do, these need to find a better way to being recycled. But yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Christian, I don't know if you have a question. Otherwise, we can move to Bill, who was the first one to connect at 5:30, and he waited us from Greece. So I don't know, Christian, if you have another question, or I can remove Andrea, bring Bill in, and just we smoothly.
Yes, we can remove, and then.
Okay, so Andrea.
Post the question later then.
No, okay, let's bring Bill in then. And hope the guys can stay backstage with us. In the meantime, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. So, Pampa. Bill Stenos, researcher in Athens, CEO of a startup, of a thing that only Christian understood when he was reading it. So I will leave Christian to lead this part. And also a member of mvnow.greece, which is our partner in the stopglobalwarming.eu initiative, and is live streaming this program. So we are in Greece. Okay, Christian, I leave you with Bill because I would.
Sorry, it's crazy. It's crazy because Bill, we are in contact every day for a project together, and I thought it was crazy when he's here in the same call as me. It's crazy. Hi, Bill. See you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
You have an actual meeting tomorrow, so it's for
Thank
it's
you,
not
Dave.
Yeah, we
a
had also today.
amazing.
I'm very happy to be part of this very nice talk. I have to congratulate you guys because I got really impressed with so many young scientists with so deep knowledge and so much to share with us as of today. I got really impressed by the economists, the ecologists, the activists, and thank God we have also Andrea who could further back me up, most probably. So congrats to both of you, Christian and Virginia. I don't know where to begin. I heard so many things, and I'm sure all of you guys know way more than I do about the carbon pricing. I was fortunate enough to have been supervised by Professor Klaus Lachner. Some of you may already know this individual. He's a German professor related to carbon capture and utilization since ever, I dare to believe. Right now, he's a director at the State University of Arizona. Back in the days, he was at Columbia University, and that's how I know him. And he was my supervisor again while doing my research thesis. And this is how also Solmeyea came up. So I heard, again, so very enlightening stuff about pricing the carbon, about fining all those big companies who are emitting tons of CO2. And we have some wishful thinking processes about hoping that the countries or the governments could push the big corporations to pay extra fines for the carbon emissions. But with all due respect, that is wishful thinking process. I said before, I don't truly believe this could possibly ever happen. There is a profit, and when there's a profit, it is not very easy even for governments to impose higher taxes on those big corporations across the world, let alone also some European countries. To my perception, I truly come very closely aligned with what Andreas mentioned about the coal, about coming all the way from China, and how about this the greenhouse the greenhouse emissions impact that we could all expect to see on all those products and commodities. So in my opinion, we should try to approach this concept from the perspective of what will be beneficial for all those corporations, these companies. In other words, apart from having the new generation of ourselves, the customers who are more aware about the environment and getting stuff who is more eco-friendly, we should try to communicate the same message or those incentives also to the corporations. And this is a way for them to start being less carbon emitters, if this is a correct expression or not, excuse me for that. In other words, we should try to express to those big companies, let's say, that, listen guys, there are some incentives from you so as to be greener. One of those incentives could possibly be the newly launched term of ESGs, environmental, social, governmental aspect of an investment. So whichever is that institution, that company who is heavily or who is already heavily who is in heavy debt because of loans from the banks in a very financially healthy way, there are some incentives again. So those companies can take some initiatives like ones Andrea would love to mention most probably, or myself like Solmeyea, and through those ways they can act, be greener. That way they can also gain back on an annual basis, given their interest rates, that they can go lower for very few base points. But if their loans are way higher, as they are, almost to $1 billion, if not more than billions, or $500 million, that's the same, it's a very high amount, lowering their interest rates by just a couple of base points on an annual basis can give them a tangible actual return on their financial statements. In the meantime, they can claim CSR-wise that they are greener, and that's also another way to attract or maintain or retain, their customers. So I think this is a triple benefit for those big corporations as long as we communicate that message to them. On another point of view, that's my last point, with all due respect, we could also, apart from, yes, it would make way more sense given the direct air capture expensive concept that we all know, mainly in Europe, thanks to this Swiss company, Climeworks, or the Canadian company, Carbon Engineering, or the global thermostat, the direct air capture as a technology is very expensive. So what we expect, if not mistaken, so please correct me if I'm wrong, we expect that the carbon taxes and the ETS carbon tariffs will go way up. So this technology will be financially meaningful to apply to any of our projects. But this possibly will never happen, raising the carbon taxes up to 500 or 600 per ton of CO2 emitted or captured in the same sense. In other words, I totally believe that what we could do instead is to try to utilize that or valorize, let's say, that those CO2 emissions coming up with high added value end products. And that's what we're trying to work on, God first, with dearest Andrea as well. So we try to capture, utilize, absorb several tons of that CO2 and pump it through vertical microalgae cultivation so as to extract safely edible proteins for us, for our animals, and also some high value, as I said, products like pharma substances or pharma molecules or cosmeceuticals. This is my opinion.
Bill, well, just one thing also, our initiative also, it's about reducing tax on labor. So maybe this can be also
applicable.
Compatible also for the big company. They can see, actually I can gain a little bit because I will have less tax on labor. But we got something common. You need to know that in my previous life, when I was from 14 to 17, I studied agriculture.
Like yesterday.
I did classical studies, I did agriculture. So, well,
you have the same way of thinking.
Yeah. Bill, so your company is producing algae, is that correct?
You said where? Yeah. Excuse me, because my signal is not very good.
Your company is producing algae, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Virginia, can you please?
The question is that,
Chris, there is a bit.
Work this more in.
We didn't hear you. My apologies, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, Christian. There is a bit of a delay. Try again, but I'm not sure it's working. Try again.
Chris, please give it one more try, please.
Thank you. Bill, so I know that your company produces algae. Is that correct?
Correct.
Lovely. And from the little things that I remember from my agricultural studies is that can be very eco-friendly. Can you tell us why?
Yes, and thanks for bringing this up to all our attention. So it is based on the very conventional photosynthetic path that we all learned during our elementary school. So the microalgae, or a seaweed, as you may call it, it technically absorbs the CO2 from the atmosphere, certain tons, certain volumes of that CO2 already emitted, already existing in the atmosphere. And along with the sunlight, which we have ample, thank God, we also have, and of course, by also feeding some fertilizers, some nutrients that we extract or fertilizing our cultivations, as Andrea mentioned before, we can cultivate the algae in any non-arable, non-fertile piece of land. Any underutilized piece of land can be used so as to harvest, let's say, our microalgae. So CO2, sunlight, and a bunch of waste side streams, or those nutrients we need from those waste side streams, you end up cultivating the algae, and that's the process in the grand scheme of things. And it is eco-friendly again, because as I say, you don't need to go to any arable, useful piece of land, and you also take the CO2 and convert this into oxygen. Of course, in a controlled, closed environment that you have to always be careful about the pH, about the temperatures and the concentrations, of course.
My father would be proud of me because I understood since the beginning the concept of your company.
So, yes, Chris. No, bye, Chris. Last question to Bill from Chris, and then we bring all our guests on stage for our orchestra moment.
Yes, what I like of this company is that, from what I remember, actually the production from algae can also be used to feed animals, which are very rich in fiber and protein. And we know that animals actually produce a lot of CO2. Basically, now I don't remember exactly one burger how much water produced and how much CO2 produced, because the intensive, how can I say, number of
Yes.
animal in 1 liter spot. So that is also another good element.
That's correct. And since you mentioned the feed proteins that we may extract from the algae, I'm happy to share with you a pretty interesting information as well. If you end up feeding your animals, the cattle, with the same animal feed ratio that you were feeding, plus a single-digit percentage of microalgae-derived proteins, within 3 months, you may expect to see 11% increase on the milk production of those cows and almost 20% increase in their meat reproduction rate. So it acts very well on the animals' well-being plus the actual reproduction rate.
Sorry. I'm creating a bit of anarchy, which is my style, because we have almost all our guests. Just Alessandro Cascavilla had to... Sorry, Chris? Okay, I carry on. So we are 7:30 CET time, so technically we are almost finishing, but I would like to use a couple of last minutes for a last round with all of you guys to answer 2 questions very quickly. First question, what did you learn from the other speakers that you didn't know before this meeting? And the second question is, why people should support stopglobalwarming.eu as a European citizen initiative? Brutal marketing, like why it makes sense to have a European citizen initiative collecting 1 million of signatures on the 4th of August. In Brussels is kind of okay, but I guess in some of your cities it's crazily hot. So 2 questions. What did you learn today from the other guys, or what struck you in what they said, and why people should support Stop Global Warming? Let's go from the last to the first. So, Bill.
Okay, there you are. So what did we learn? Being a strong advocate of diversity, I would love to see more women on the panel. So I trust we have brilliant ladies, and they should also be part of that initiative. So we're lacking about girls' minds. And in reference to how we should market, excuse me, I missed your second question, my apologies.
Why you think European citizens in the academy and not should support, meaning sign and get others to sign stopglobalwarming.eu as a European citizen initiative? Like why?
With all due respect, although we didn't invent most probably the fire, the wheel or anything, we are the ones who invented the civilization, all of us, Europeans, so, and then science in general. So I think it makes more sense to one more time innovate and disrupt something that has already been wrongly established so far.
Thank you, Bill Stenos.
Heavily scientific, but thank you.
We started, we weren't connected at the real beginning, but we started saying that Christian and I are not scientists. So we are trying to be the bridge between the academic transnational world and the citizens. So it's perfect. Andrea Salimbeni.
I learned a lot of things, mainly from the guys like Filipe talking regarding, and Franco talking about mostly the economic aspect and the international aspect of ecology, which is something that technical researchers have always far from their daily life. Regarding the reason why to sign and support of global warming, I think this is the only way we have in Europe to demonstrate that we are a real union with a single strategy, at least because there are countries that have already the CO2 pricing, other countries they don't, and we have been the first continent, or in any case, yes, continent in the world, accepting the fact that global warming is real. So it will be a strong message for all European citizens to be together towards a target.
Thank you, Andrea. Anna, I hope you're not yet drunk since you're on holiday, so let's use the last moment of sobriety and tell us something.
No, I agree strongly with Andrea. I think we as a reunion, we should hold together. Also, we're responsible for also the imports. And if all of Europe is following the same rules, only then it works. And what I learned from this webinar is that there are initiatives that can be developed to actually, as a citizen, to contribute to that, and which is great. You guys did a very good job, and some breath.
Thank you, Anna. We hope we can rely on you in helping us spreading the voice in Germany. It's a huge country, and we need to collect 1 million signatures, and each country has a sort of a threshold, and Germany is big. So whatever you can do to help us is very, very helpful. And thanks for being with us also with such a short notice. Franco.
So, what did I learn? What I learned is that it's absolutely fundamental to get all these people together. We need to really have more of these discussions, bring more diversity, have a more global view on these issues, both from an interdisciplinary perspective, but also from a cultural perspective as well. Those are some big challenges. The second question was
why we are doing this? Why everyone on the 4th of August should sign this ECI?
I'm going to make like a selfish appeal. Ultimately, this is going to affect us all economically. If we do not tackle climate change appropriately, it will disrupt supply chains internationally and eventually increase prices anyways in Europe in a way that is completely out of control. So it is better if we do it properly and with control. Ultimately, if people don't want to just live in poverty, basically.
Thank you, Franco. Filipe, and don't go too long as usual, Filipe. Be Filipe, be Austrian.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I learned from the other panelists, is that not all academics like me have this inability to give shorter answers. So the other ones managed to give good short answers. So that's something I need to practice, definitely. Why everyone should support it? Well, because I think so. Politicians with good intentions do not win elections very often, and carbon price is the example of that. Politicians that propose carbon taxes usually do not get very popular, and this would be one way of us citizens showing at least a few politicians, hey, there's 1 million people who actually care. There's 1 million people who would back you up, even though might not be on a country level. That would tell you there's enough of a social movement supporting such initiatives, and I think that's the crucial goal here, is to show the political class that tough but brave decisions have some support from the electorate, which hasn't been the case until now.
Thank you, Filipe. Christian, before our closure music moments, shall we say something?
I'll tell you what I've learned today, that we really need, to meet together and start to transform all this idea in really actions. So therefore, what we are doing, Gilda, with humans and stop global warming, it's actually the right thing. So all this time that we invest, it
makes sense. It makes sense.
Time invested.
That's good news. That's good news. Good perspective. Okay, so I'm gonna screen the videos And in the meantime, we say goodbye to the people following on social media channels, and see you probably in September, but who you don't know, for the next live to stopglobalwarming.eu format. We had a lot of communities so far, so we need to come up with a new community to discuss about carbon price increase. Let's think about it. Thanks, everyone. And let's go with the closure and sign and get others to sign stopglobalwarming.eu.
Thank you.
Thanks.